Hello everyone, and many thanks for visiting this channel. In this video, I would like to expand on the concepts explained on a previous video regarding the geology of the Moon. When you look at the Moon, we can clearly distinguish lighter and darker areas. The geological composition of these areas is so important for future and current settlements on the Moon, and it is of great interest to many private companies for space-based business. Yes, you heard me say current settlements, because based on many observations made by hundreds of astronomers and scientists for many years, certain Moon features indicate local activity. This is a statement that obviously you won't see on mainstream media, but there's many scientific research and reports to validate it. From my personal limited experience, when I had a chance to observe the Moon, I live in London and most of the time it's really cloudy, I noticed certain peculiarities that makes me wonder. This is not immediately obvious through the eyepiece, but using a 5mm lens, you get really close and personal. As you get closer, you start to see the Moon is colorful. You can see subtle whites and greens and blue colors. One striking feature when you are this close is the presence of a persistent mist, as if you see clouds or dust storms which obscures the view. It is as if there was atmospheric turbulence. This is the thing. We have been told that there is basically no atmosphere on the Moon, so how can this be mist or clouds or dust? Mist and clouds will not stay up unless there is a considerable atmosphere and gravity. Dust, on the other hand, will drop down to the lunar surface relatively quickly unless there is an energy source that pushes it around. The lunar highlands and media possess abundant resources and raw materials. They are suitable for space exploration. So having bases on the Moon facilitate a space-based lucrative economy. This is the reason why many private companies are eager to get to the Moon. But have we already been beaten in this race? I personally think that this is the case. This is a race we already lost, and we lost it eons ago, many years ago. There is so much evidence on the surface of the Moon to indicate that somebody is already exploiting the resources available. These resources have been confirmed by remote sensing missions that we deployed 2 decades ago, or over the past 2 decades basically, during NASA missions, Apollo and Clementine. The ancient light-colored anorthosite highlands are very rich in calcium and silicates, magnesium, aluminium and oxygen. The basaltic large impact basins media are rich in iron, magnesium, uranium, titanium, ilmenite, which has a lot of oxygen, especially abundant in the west of Oceanus Procellarum and in the east of Mare Tranquillitatis. The regolith, which covers the entire lunar surface, is very rich in solar wind implanted volatiles such as hydrogen, calcium, sulfur and helium-3. Also, there are considerable reservoirs of water that reside under the polar caps and also in the permanently shadowed areas or bed floors of some craters. You see, water particles lay trapped under the surface due to the impact of comets and hydrated meteorites. It is estimated that about 3 million tons of water can be extracted. Oxygen can be extracted from silicate materials in the regolith. The moon, as I said, it has a lot of metals which are essential for constructing industrial and scientific infrastructures on it. As I said, iron is abundant on the media and is actually locked in silicate minerals, pyroxene and olivine, and also ilmenite. Obviously, it needs to be extracted, and this is an intensive, energy-intensive process. But once you do it, the byproduct is oxygen. Iron is also present in the regolith in its native form, so it's easier to obtain. There is no need for extraction. Titanium is present in the mineral ilmenite, which is abundant in the seas. It needs to be extracted, of course, but oxygen is produced as a result of this extraction. This is not only economically attractive but extremely useful for lunar bases. Aluminium is present in the lunar highlands regolith. Silicon, which is useful for the construction of sunlight solar cells, for the conversion of sunlight into electricity, is abundant in all lunar rocks. Thorium and uranium are also abundant on the moon and are important for the development of space-based nuclear power stations and nuclear propulsion. So, when you take all this into consideration, you can start putting the dots together. You can actually start seeing the picture, and you can actually say, yes, there is activity on the moon, and there is a reason for it. The moon is so rich in all these elements that it has the raw materials to sustain a civilization, which not necessarily have to live on the surface of it, but it could be living under the moon. It could be living in the craters. I mean, this explains why we see so much going on the moon. It makes sense for a civilization to have big machines which are mining the moon, which are mining the crater rims, and in doing so, dust is dispersed. This constant mining is actually constantly producing this persistent dust. And this is why when you look at the moon, when you get closer, you're not seeing clouds, you're not seeing mist, you're actually seeing dust, which is responsible for the obscuration, one of those lunar transient phenomena. Now, by mining the moon, by exploiting the helium-3, which is basically abundant on the moon, and when it is fused with deuterium, you produce energy through nuclear reaction. By exploiting helium-3, you actually produce the electricity needed to power those machines. By power the airships or crafts that you need to move things around the moon from crater to crater. Helium-3 gives you the energy source to extract those rich elements from the media, from the highlands, by extracting oxygen from ilmenite. And obviously, oxygen can be irrigated. Another byproduct is water that can be irrigated through channels or through lava flows on the moon to reach whoever is living under the moon. That is a logical explanation. If you extract or process silicates that are widespread on the lunar surface, if you process silicates and silicon, you can produce solar panels. that also produce electricity for the machinery to work. And this might explain these luminosities, these flashes of light that we see or people have seen for centuries on the moon. And this is probably the activation of those solar panels, solar panels that produce these flashes of light. So that's the reason for flashes, for obscuration, the dust being propelled constantly. It's something to think about because the moon is so interesting. There's so much activity, so many things going on the moon. The constant mining activity is necessary to support life. I mean, it's human nature to trade. So, for economic purposes, to make money, to exchange goods, we trade all the time. And I think it's not just human nature, it's a characteristic which is inherent to not just human race but to other races. And this is probably what is happening in space. There is big trade going on, and it's not just the moon that is so rich in raw materials that civilizations or races are exploiting, and they actually establish bases on the moon. Not just one civilization, not just one race, but probably 2 or 3 or 4. They already exploiting the moon for the purpose of making business, interstellar business. That's why you see this activity. You see, actually, when you look at the moon, you see things going on inside the craters, which explain, okay, they mine in the moon, so they need planes or crafts to get the minerals or the raw materials or the process elements and move them to bases where they can process them further and then sell them somewhere else, take them somewhere else to settle down somewhere else. That makes sense. So we mentioned that private companies are planning to go to the moon. They've been planning for many years and exploit it, but are we going to be allowed to go there? Knowing that there's already people living in there, other civilizations already in charge of the moon. I don't think we'll be allowed to, and I don't think we have. I think that is why we haven't gone back to the moon. When I say we, is the certain part of the population, certain groups, certain companies, but we don't know what sort of business is going under it. We don't know whether there is some elite which is already been allowed to go and establish themselves on the moon. It's a lot of food for thoughts. Thanks for watching.